Hey everybody, welcome back to the second tabletop role-playing game video in my series. Sorry for the long delay. I just finished my first month on a new job. I think I now have a good handle on the routine and the schedule, so hopefully I'll start posting more videos more consistently again. Sorry again for the delay. Today, we're going to look at another game series that's very near and dear to my heart, Everyday Heroes. Now, I was blessed with the opportunity to be a part of the Kickstarter that launched this game by Evil Genius Games Company, and I absolutely love it. This game is to modern action role-playing games what Dungeons & Dragons is to fantasy role-playing games. In fact, Everyday Heroes was inspired by the 3.5 edition D&D supplement book called D20 Modern, which gave you rules and support for playing a modern-day adventure game. Now, if you ever have read books like The Dresden Files by Jim Butcher, with that sort of modern-day fantasy noir urban arcana vibe, that's the sort of thing that I'm talking about when I talk about Everyday Heroes and D20 Modern. But not just that. Oh, by the way, before I forget, big shout out to the art team from Evil Genius Games who was responsible for the cover art you're looking at here. This is the cover art of the Everyday Heroes core book, and several bits of interior art from the core book and the Vault supplement are also peppered throughout this particular presentation. Big shout out to the art team over there. I love the art in this book. It is absolutely riveting and breathtaking. And without further ado, let's get into the basics of Everyday Heroes. What is Everyday Heroes? It is a cinematic action role-playing game. The players create and guide parties, or teams, of heroes in adventures. They use their teamwork, their creativity to handle the challenges placed before them. Now, what makes this a cinematic action RPG as opposed to a fantasy one? Well, a lot of the inspiration for Everyday Heroes and for its various supplements comes from films, specifically the action-adventure and spy movies of the 1980s all the way to the present. In fact, you can see two examples of said films over here on the right. While the setting of Everyday Heroes is largely a modern, everyday, if you'll pardon the pun, our world situation, with, of course, more fantastic cinematic edge to it, there has been supplement and support and guidance for doing Victorian steampunk adventures or near-future and sci-fi settings. Again, I refer to the pictures I have here from the internet showing screenshots from two action films I'm very fond of. You might recognize everyone's favorite mutant, Wolverine, played by Hugh Jackman in Wolverine Origins, as he walks away from a big explosion. You might recognize in the bottom photograph Bruce Willis as John McClane, everyone's favorite New York City cop in the first Die Hard film. So this game is incredibly adaptable. You can have a more realistic style of game where you're playing a non-superhuman figure, an everyday human, if you will, but with extraordinary grit and talent. Or you could play a relatively near-future sci-fi setting of mutants, of mild space exploration, of cyborgs, whole nine yards. Or you could have a little Back to the Future moment. Now, the Game Master. This is the title usually given to what in Dungeons & Dragons is called a Dungeon Master. The Game Master is the player in charge of the story, the challenges, the non-player characters, both allies and enemies, and any monsters you may face. And even though the 20-sided die is the premier dice for determining outcomes in this game, just like in D&D, the whole range of die sizes will be used in this game based on the equipment and weapons you have. For those unfamiliar, a D4 is a 4-sided die, a D6 is a 6-sided die, a D8 is an 8-sided die, a D10 a 10-sided die, a D12, well, that's a 12-sided die. And last, but most importantly, is the D20 or 20-sided die. The basic mechanics are going to revolve around a roll of a d20. In a combat situation, the attacking character will roll a 20-sided die and add the ability bonus that the weapon uses. If it's a melee in close weapon, usually that'll be strength. If it's a ranged weapon, usually that will be dexterity. And if you're proficient in that brand of equipment, you get to add your proficiency bonus to that attack roll. If the sum of these numbers meets or beats a target's defense, you hit. You would then take whatever size of damage die the weapon has and add the ability modifier you used for the attack roll, add that modifier to the die roll of the damage die, and that's the damage your character deals to their target. We also have ability checks. This is when a character rolls a 20-sided die and adds an ability score bonus to it. Not the score itself, just the bonus, want to be clear. If this happens to be a skill check, you would add proficiency if the skill is something you're proficient in. And if the sum total meets or beats a difficulty class or DC number, you win the check. Now, there are some checks that are contests. These are when you have two characters, usually a player character hero and an NPC by the GM, both trying to do the same ability check or related ability checks against each other. Instead of a static single number difficulty class, both people will roll, and you're rolling against whatever the outcome of the other guy is. Basically, whoever gets the highest check in the contest is going to win. Then we come to saving throws. This is when a targeted character rolls a 20-sided die and adds the ability bonus that they are told, hey, this is a strength saving throw, so roll your strength bonus, or so on and so forth. If you are proficient in that kind of saving throw, which is determined by your character archetype and class, then you get to add your proficiency bonus. If the sum total meets or beats the saving throw DC, you either completely avoid the effect or mitigate, have the effect maybe. And I've said the word proficiency a few times just to remind you all, if you're not familiar with the concept from the D&D video, this is a bonus given to a player character based on the total level of character. Is this a first level character or a second level character? Then your proficiency bonus will be a +2. As you go up in levels, that proficiency bonus also increases. Advantage is a popular mechanic that was, if memory serves, they actually started playing around with that back in 4th edition Dungeons & Dragons, but it's become immensely popular, stayed through 5th edition, and through 5e connected games like Everyday Heroes, the mechanic remains. You roll a d20 twice, keep the higher roll. The reverse of this is disadvantage, where you roll the d20 twice and keep the lower roll. Now, a talent is a special ability that a character gets. You will get your talent, or talents, I should say. You'll get one from your origin. More on that later. You'll get one from your background, one from your profession, and you'll get at least one talent every odd level from your class. More on that later. And then, of course, dice roll aside, mechanic rules aside, this is a role-playing game. There will be at least a significant amount of the game where your character is interacting with the environment around them, with the NPCs, maybe with other player characters. And if your hero does something particularly creative or awe-inspiring, your game master might stand up and give you a standing ovation and award you inspiration. Having both GM'd this game and played this game, I've both awarded and occasionally been awarded this particular reward. Now, the 6 ability scores and their skills. We have a very familiar set of ability scores. This makes Everyday Heroes a very easy hop, skip, and a jump to just dive right into if you're a player of traditional Dungeons & Dragons. And while all skills are connected to these 6 ability scores, the exact skills you have in Everyday Heroes is unique to Everyday Heroes because of its modern setting. So, let's begin. Strength is your physical power and athleticism, and the one strength skill is athletics. This is things like being able to try a jump that's out of your usual normal jump range, whether it's a high jump or a long jump. This is your ability to maybe try and lift a heavy weight or bend the bars of the prison gate sort of thing. Dexterity is your physical agility, your reflexes, your ability to maintain your coordination and balance despite distractions and physical instability in the ground. And dexterity skills include acrobatics, which could be anything from parkour to trying to flip over a sensor of some kind as you're defeating a security system. Sleight of hand, everything from stage magic tricks to picking someone's pocket, planting something on someone, maybe even hiding something in the palm of your hand, or possibly even picking a manual lock. Stealth, the ability to vanish in the blink of an eye, to dive behind an unusually skinny tree, Scooby-Doo style, and still figure out a way to become unseen or unheard. Vehicles. In Everyday Heroes, vehicles, whether it's air or water or land vehicles, you use the same skill to do tricks or stunts with them. If you're in a chase sequence, which is a unique thing for Everyday Heroes, you'll probably be using the vehicle skill a lot to avoid various things, but more on that when we talk about chases. Constitution is your physical stamina, your vitality, your health, and Constitution has a skill. Endurance. This is rolled when a character wants to try and maintain focus despite being plunged in freezing water, or is trying to hold their breath to avoid smelling the sewer that they're currently crawling through to get to an objective, things like that. Intelligence is a combination of mental sharpness, ability to recall information, and your skill at analyzing information once you have it. As a result, intelligence skills will run the gamut between information recall skills and applied skills. Computers is the ability to program, use, and hack at various electronic devices that have computing power. Investigation is your Sherlock Holmes-like ability to decipher codes and piece things together. Mechanics is your ability to repair devices, to set traps, to safely disarm them. Medicine is not just your ability to diagnose by recalling knowledge of medical sciences and biology, but your ability to actually apply first aid, something that any character can do, especially if they have a first aid kit. Natural science is more your knowledge base. This is when you have knowledge of the physical sciences, geology, meteorology, chemistry, physics, maybe even a little bit of biology in there as well. Security is your ability to set up, disarm, and access physical and electronic security systems, be it a traditional padlock to an electronic key padlock to motion sensors, things like that. And social sciences will be your knowledge of geography, history, political science, recent events, things of that nature. Wisdom is your intuition plus your awareness of your surroundings and your awareness of yourself and your own identity and core values, as well as your ability to really gain insight into other people's motivations. The wisdom skills will include arts and crafts, which is your skill of artistic expression. This is where artistic intuition and insight can let you craft a poem or do some sort of absolutely enchanting vocal or dance performance that distracts somebody or something. Insight, your ability to gauge the honesty, motivations, and emotions of people around you. Perception, if investigation lets you put the clues together, perception lets you find them in the first place. Your awareness of your surroundings. Streetwise is your ability to navigate a city environment, whether it's the seedier underworld side of the city, such as knowing where fences are for stolen goods, or what local organization of ill repute owns this or that gambling house, or whether it's knowing where public transit stations are and how often they're on time or what time they usually arrive. Or even if it's just knowing how to get to the public library, which you know is a relatively safe space. Survival works on the same idea as Streetwise, but focuses on the wilderness environments, your ability to find food and shelter there, your ability to track and hunt. And that brings us to charisma, which is confidence, eloquence, forceful personality, animal magnetism, if you will. Most charisma skills involve influencing other people, whether it's using deception to manipulate through lies and half-truths, whether it's intimidation to sway someone to your opinion by direct threats or veiled threats, or whether it's persuasion when you're, well, persuading someone based on your charm or logical argument. Performance is the odd man out, and this is where I need to correct myself. Arts and craft would be more the physical creation side of art, such as creating a beautiful sculpture or painting or a poem. Performance would be more the singing or declaring of a song or poem, interpretive dance to distract and enthrall, that sort of thing. If you are familiar with combat in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, or its 2024 recent edition, then jumping into Everyday Heroes combat will be pretty straightforward for you. There are, however, a few differences, but the basic order and structure of combat remains the same, which, for my money, is really fun for cinematic combat. First up, everyone rolls initiative. Everyone rolls a 20-sided die and adds their dexterity bonus. The one with the highest sum has the higher, or highest in this case, initiative and goes first. This initiative order is kept through every turn until the combat is over. Now, when it's your turn, you're able to move up to your speed and take one action. Now, certain talents and feats will say that you can use a bonus action to do something, but you can only ever use one bonus action on your turn. Some talents and feats also say that you can use a reaction. This is something that you can do after or before your turn that interrupts someone else's action. But you can only ever use one reaction between the end of one turn and the beginning of another turn of yours. Once everyone has taken a turn, the round is over. And then you repeat this as many rounds as you need to either completely demolish your opposition or to terrify them enough that they all run away. Now, what actions can you take in combat? Most of these will seem pretty familiar if you're familiar, again, with 5th edition D&D or its 2024 current edition, but there are some key differences. In Everyday Heroes, the attack action can be used to either literally roll an attack roll with a weapon, or to do a special attack, and these include shoving, tripping, grappling. Now, these special attacks are often contest rolls rather than straight attack rolls, but they count as attacks. That means when you take the attack action, you can do any of these. Many character classes at 5th level will grant advanced combat training as a talent, which lets you, once per turn, take 2 attacks when you take the attack action. If you have that, then you can use one of your attacks to do a special attack, say to trip the enemy, and then if you do that, then they're prone, they're on the ground, which gives you advantage. You can then use your second attack to actually attack, which you'll be able to roll that with advantage because you used the first one to special attack trip. Now, brace. Brace is a brand new action related to the chase rules. An encounter or combat where the focus is you either chasing after someone to catch them or you running away so you don't get caught. Now, when you brace, the following occurs. When it's your turn on a chase and you choose to brace, you're stating that you are focusing on preparing for whatever new complication pops up, which will give you advantage on your next ability check or saving throw that you have to roll during this encounter. More on that a little bit later. The dash action lets you move a second time, again up to your speed rating. Disengage is when you want to use your action to effectively do a little zigging and zagging so that you can move without provoking an attack of opportunity. Everyone has the ability to use a reaction to make an attack of opportunity when someone that is right next to them, that is adjacent to them, tries to move away from them. If you choose the disengage action, that lets you use your movement to move away without triggering that particular opportunity attack reaction. Dodge Well, this means you're literally focusing on dodging and defense for that entire round in combat. So when you are using the dodge action, anyone attacking you has disadvantage on the attack rolls, and you, the dodger, have advantage on dexterity saving throws. And this will last until the start of your next turn, where you can choose to either dodge again as your next turn's action, or do something else. Now we're coming into brand new territory. If you look in the Dungeon Master's Guide of 5th Edition Dungeons & Dragons, or in the Player's Guide of the 2024 Current Edition, firearms can be found, and rules for playing them can be found. Those firearms in D&D tend to be single-shot flintlock pistols and rifles sorts of things, although if you look at the Dungeon Master's Guide in 5th Edition from 2014, there are pretty interesting rules for modern and even futuristic laser weapon styles of firearms. Everyday Hero in the core book provides a series of equipment groupings from basic to advanced to military, and all of these will include some firearms as part of their ranged weapon options. There's also a historical equipment option that will have things like crossbows and such instead of guns. But not many character classes will have historical equipment options. Or rather, let me rephrase, not as many classes will have historical weapons and equipment options for proficiency compared to, say, Dungeons & Dragons, where everybody gets that. But for firearms, you can use an action to clear a jammed weapon. Now, some character classes and some types of firearms and feats will let you do this as a bonus action, but it is an action option. You can use an action to reload, and that's just like it sounds. Now, you generally have to have a free hand to do this. And some weapons will have rules, and some talents will give you rules that let you do this as a bonus action. Suppressive fire. This one is an action that you can take only if you are using a firearm weapon that has either the semi-auto or full auto traits. Basically, you can use this action to create an area target effect that uses up more ammunition, but can force targets to be threatened as a group instead of just aiming at one opponent at a time. This can also be used for covering fire. Now, the various weapons will have rules about what their field of fire is going to be and what you can do if you're in the field of fire. This is where the die for cover reaction is going to come into play. Literally throwing yourself on the ground so you're prone. But this is a pretty impressive and rather terrifying situation. So the example they give in the book for suppressive fire is, let's say a hero is facing off against a group of criminals firing at his allies from behind a concrete barrier. Well, the character in question's got a weapon with full auto trait that can cover a target area of up to 30 feet wide. The barrier is 25 feet across, so the character gets to target the full length of it with suppressive fire, threatening every enemy behind the barrier. Now, if you are caught in the field of fire, you either can use a reaction called dive for cover, throwing yourself prone, to get behind a barrier, or you can stay and get hit. Because suppressive fire, field of fire is going to deal damage to everyone in it that is not diving for cover, either on the ground or behind something. Now, gain ground is another chase-specific action. That's when you choose to use your turn during the chase to get an advantage over your opponent by using the current circumstances of the chase to either make it more difficult for the opponent to get away from you or catch you, or to speed yourself up and earn some chase points. The help action. This is basically when you give an ally advantage on one ability check or attack roll before the start of your next turn, but you've got to be within reach of them to do this. Maybe you're heckling their opponent, or maybe you're giving them encouraging words, or maybe you're saying, hey, on your 6, things like that. Object interaction. just like it sounds. It could be trying to get a piece of heavy equipment like a construction yard magnet to turn on so you can grab the enemy androids that are against you. It could be, well, just picking up a large awkward item or picking a lock to unlock a door, things like that. The ready action lets you basically say, I don't want to do something right now, but I'm going to ready something. If before my next turn someone does, and you pick a triggering action, maybe it's if someone opens the door or opens fire on my friends, then my readied action will take place. It lets you break the initiative order temporarily, just for that one time. Now, Second Wind. In Dungeons & Dragons 5e and its accompanying 2024 edition, Second Wind was an ability unique to the fighter class, but in Everyday Heroes, everyone can do it. Some classes will allow you to do this as a bonus action, most notably the Commando Tough Hero, but every character can use their action to Second Wind. When you do this action, you can spend up to half your maximum number of hit dice, rounded up, and when you roll them, you add your Constitution modifier to each die you roll, and regain hit points equal to the total of all those dice rolled and that bonus attached to each die. Now, once you use this action, you've got to take a rest, short or long, before you can use it again, but this is pretty potent for keeping every single possible character class and archetype option on their feet in a rough combat. And then we've got the, what I like to call, use a skill action. First aid is, well, it's just like it sounds. You're going to be using a medicine check and a first aid kit, if you've got one, to provide first aid. Whether it's stabilizing someone that's bleeding out or trying to help them heal. Hide. You use the stealth action to hide. Sorry, use the stealth skill in the hide action to try and hide. Slip of the tongue. And then we have search. This is when you use your investigation or perception to find clues, find hidden doors, what have you. You spend your action doing that instead of, flinging lead out there or trying to engage in fisticuffs. Maybe the other members of the party are dealing with the heavy combat while you're trying to find the hidden lever to trigger a trap that will benefit your allies but hurt your opponents. And that's pretty much combat. And incidentally, shout out to some of the action movies whose star images I found online. We have Jean-Claude Van Damme in his Universal Soldier role. We have Jet Li in The One, Wesley Snipes as his iconic blade, and from the pages of the core book, the iconic sharpshooter, Shorsha, as she flings herself with her two pistols laying down her own covering fire. Now, Everyday Heroes has some interesting, unique mechanics that make it different from Dungeons & Dragons. For example, I mentioned defense earlier when I talked about combat, not armor class. Armor and shields are a thing. They're part of the equipment packages you can get and get proficient in. But armor and shields do not add to your defense. Your defense is based entirely on your character archetype. What armor does is offer you a chance to completely negate the damage of an attack that would drop you to 0 hit points. Every piece of armor has an armor value. Every weapon has a penetration value. If your armor value is greater than or equal to the penetration value of the attacking weapon, and the damage rolled would drop you to 0, you can make an armor saving throw. If you make this saving throw, and the saving throw is based on your proficiency in the armor type or equipment that the equipment type the armor's from, if you make this save, the armor is broken, but all damage from that fatal attack is negated. Now, while the armor is broken, any further armor saving throws are done with disadvantage, but you can generally, with the proper tools and skills, fix that armor up during a rest. Shields don't provide armor value. What shields do is provide cover, and cover is a static defense. It doesn't add to your defense. It doesn't allow armor saves. It says, hey, I've got a shield that gives me half cover. I've got a huge tower shield that gives me 3/4 cover, things like that. Chase is a combat variant where there is a chase point counter or tracker, and one side is the chaser, one side is getting chased. Each round, a complication will arise from environmental concerns, from random chance, and as I mentioned before, especially if you use the gain ground action during a chase, you can add some complications or give disadvantage to your opponent when dealing with complications. It's pretty sweet and fun. I remember the first time I was involved in a chase sequence when playing this game. It was set in New Orleans during Mardi Gras, and it was a blast, let me tell you. Now, damage reduction. If you ever played 3rd edition or 3.5 edition Dungeons & Dragons, this is an old throwback, if you will. It's just like it sounds. You take damage, and you reduce the damage. Now, damage reduction in Everyday Heroes can either be general. All tough heroes, for example, get damage reduction against everything, any kind of damage. But maybe a character feature, maybe a talent or a bit of cybernetics will give you damage reduction only for a specific kind of damage. Well, then you would only reduce the damage of that type. Not many, a number of classes have talents that let you have incoming damage as a reaction. In those cases, you have the damage first, and then you reduce what remains with your damage reduction, which makes this a really sweet ability. Now, as I mentioned, firearms are a big part of Everyday Heroes because it's based on modern-day action adventure films. And firearms will deal ballistic damage as opposed to the traditional bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing. Other weapons will deal those, but anything that's a firearm is generally going to do ballistic damage, with a few exceptions. And of course, you have explosives that will deal explosive damage, as this is a modern-day setting. In the core book, there is no magical energy type of damage. It's just bludgeoning, piercing, slashing, poison, acid, lightning or electricity, plus explosive and ballistic, and psychic for mental fatigue and draining effects. Because hit points aren't just physical hit points; they're a measure of your ability to stay conscious and active in a scene. So, pretty wide set of damage types, and the 2 new damage types fit in pretty well with the aesthetic and equipment of a modern-day setting. There's also something called group skill tests. Now, I sometimes would do this in 5e as a house rule, and I love that this is a codified rule in Everyday Heroes. If the team's all trying to sneak in, you can say, I'm going to make this a group skill test. Everybody roll stealth. So long as at least half of the team gets the skill test, then the whole team counts as winning the test. That can really save your bacon. Another interesting feature of Everyday Heroes is that it only goes up to level 10. Now, some people might gripe about that, but in traditional Dungeons & Dragons of just about every edition, you go from level 1 to level 20. Most games I have played in have not gotten past, say, level 13, 14. Now, I'm blessed to have played in a few games that did go much farther, and in some cases are going farther than that presently. But a lot of times, from what I've heard from people that play, if you start a character at first level, it will take you a while to get even to level 10. Everyday Heroes makes a 10-level system, and every level you get something that's pretty impactful. Every odd level, starting at level 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, every odd level you get at least one class talent. And at level 1, you also get, of course, your profession, origin, and background talents, whatever they may be. You also get your class specialization right there at level 1, right from the start, right out of the gate. You can be the exact flavor and style of archetype you want to be. Now, every even level, that's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, you get a feat. And the feats are built in and to this game so that you can get them at every even level, and they will provide great flavor, great Advantages, both in some cases literal mechanical advantage, but also narrative advantage or just advantage in the general sense of the word. And they're very fun. I love this system. It's really quite good. Now, multi-classing is only possible through feats. If you want to multi-class, if you want to dip into the abilities of another class, whether it's a class of your archetype or not, then you have to take a feat. Instead of getting a particular feat that you might want for your character concept, you say, I'm going to get the multi-class feat for this archetype, if it's a class in a different archetype. Or I'm going to get multi-class feat of this class that I either am already of the same archetype of, or that I've gained access to through the multi-class archetype feat. This means that when you multi-class, you don't sacrifice the keystone highest level ability of your original class. I think that's pretty darn awesome. Now, on the downside, you don't get the access to the keystone ability, the final ultimate ability of the thing you're multi-classing into, but let's face it, you wouldn't get that anyway if you were doing things multi-classing the way you do in D&D. Now, as part of the Kickstarter, Everyday Heroes introduced a number of cinematic adventure supplements, which is a combination setting guide / one-shot or two-shot adventure. And these cinematic adventures were all based on cult classic films. Now, these cinematic adventures added various new optional rules, whether it's colossal scaling and mecha, cybernetic enhancements for your characters, or mutation enhancements for your characters, dueling, like specific rules if you want to have a cinematic style of duel and get some more mechanical crunch into that, and even ritual magic as a type of skill check and research option. And by the way, shout out to the action-adventure films over here, where we have Denzel Washington from The Equalizer and Dave Bautista in My Spy. And we've also got some examples of character classes from The Vault, some of my personal favorites, the Strategist and the Cybermodder. Now let's talk character creation. And yes, I've got another set of possible characters you could be inspired by, whether it's Will Smith and Martin Lawrence's awesome buddy cop duo from the Bad Boys film franchise, or whether it's the A-Team that you see depicted below them. This is the original TV show version, although if you saw the movie version with Liam Neeson, both are fantastic. I enjoy both. And then we have the iconic Smart Hero character from the interior art of the core book. Character creation, you could argue, starts with a concept, but in terms of mechanics, it starts with your origin. Now, the default origin in the core book is human, but in the Vault, additional origins are added for your choice. And if you're a human, then you have the ability to roll 4 6-sided die and keep the 3 highest roll, add all that together. You get to do that for every single one of your ability scores. And you get the basic spread of ability scores if you want to use a spread instead of rolling the dice. Non-human origins will have limits on the number of dice you roll for ability scores and how high those scores get. But you get special talents and perks. Generating the ability scores. Within the limits set by your origin, you either roll d6s or use a score spread. Choose a background. Now, backgrounds in Everyday Heroes give you ability score bonuses, as well as proficiencies in skills and occasionally languages, and a talent. Most backgrounds also come with some sort of iconic equipment. Iconic equipment does not provide any mechanical benefit, but it's very fun narrative flavor for the character. Now, if the background is literally the character's background, where they came from narratively, the profession is what is their day job when they're not heroes. Clark Kent is a journalist. Bruce Wayne is a wealthy socialite. Things like that. Profession will also provide ability score bonuses, as well as proficiencies in skills and sometimes languages. And occasionally there will also be equipment bonuses. And again, you'll get iconic equipment, you'll get a talent, but your profession will set your wealth score. Now, I probably should have included wealth as some of the unique mechanics, but instead of tracking gold pieces and currency, Everyday Heroes gives every character, every hero at least, a wealth score. and every piece of equipment has a wealth score attached to it. The idea is that if your wealth is of a certain level, you should be able to reasonably acquire any piece of equipment with that same wealth rating or lower, within a reasonable space of time. Now you choose your character archetype. There are 6 archetypes, one for each of the ability scores. We'll talk about them in a second. And your archetype gives you your hit die size, it determines your hit point calculations, it determines your proficiency in... well, actually, the proficiency for skills, saves, and equipment will come from the class specialization you choose in each archetype at level 1. Your defense, however, is calculated based on your archetype, not your class. And every archetype will give at least 1 starting talent at level 1, as I said earlier, and additional talents at various other levels. Specifically, every archetype gives you talents at level 1 and level 2. That's all the archetype will give you. But the classes will provide talents every odd level. This means your first 2 levels are going to feel incredibly impactful for character power growth and new skills and abilities to get. After you've chosen your archetype and class, determine their persona. This is where a lot of narrative roleplay comes in. This is where your storytelling comes into play. What motivates your hero? What are they attached to, either philosophically or in terms of people and places and things? Where did they come from? What's their literal story? What's their biography? Do they have little quirks? One of the first characters I made, his little quirk was that he loved the chocolate-coated cookie sticks called Pepero. I love Pepero sticks from the H-Mart. I think they're very tasty and delicious. So I thought, this character just is constantly eating those Pepero sticks. I thought that was a fun thing, kind of like Kojak had his lollipop. And then, of course, you get equipment. The equipment will be suggested or given by your character class, your background and profession, or if you just want to buy it and negotiate between your wealth score and your game master. Origins. As I mentioned before, the baseline origin is human. No special abilities or talents, but no limits on the ability score. That's basically the special ability of humans. They have unmatched potential in terms of ability score. In the Vault, Volume 1, indicating, we hope, that there will be in the future a Volume 2 when enough supplements are created to fill up another one, there are some new origins, such as Cyborg. You can see the person with robotic 4 spider legs and a futuristic rifle. That is an example of the Cyborg origin from the Vault book. The image of the woman with many flashbacks across history is an example of the Immortal origin. The person clinging to walls Spider-Man style is an example of the Mutant origin. And the young person with a clearly mechanical arm is a synthetic, a fully aware and self-realized synthezoid, a synthetic artificial person. And they oftentimes have camouflage that makes them look like they are a fully biological person, but they are in fact robotic, completely. Now, there are some books coming up in the future. Intergalactic Heroes is going to be one of the next big books coming out after a few other supplements, and Everyday Arcana is going to be coming out at some point in the next few years, and both of these have promised to present us with more origins. Intergalactic Heroes with the alien species, Everyday Arcana with various classic fantasy species, but tailored to a Dresden's Files style modern setting. By the way, the Cyborg, just like it sounds, you get right off the bat at character creation some free resource called Strain that you can use to outfit your character with a cybernetic arm or a built-in weapon or a cyber eye. Immortals are, well, they're immortal. They don't age. They have the ability to gain spirit points through often combat with other immortals and destroying other immortals, but they always have a weakness. They always have some way that they can actually die, even though anywhere else will just knock them out, and, well, they take a licking and keep on kicking. And mutants, they start out with, depending on like the cyborgs, on the level of their buy-in to this origin, they can start out with either a minor or a major or two mutation. Synthetics, they get a lot off the bat. They basically get a lot of free cybernetics because that makes up their entire body as a robot. But they do have some restrictions and some downsides to balance them out. Now the archetypes. I've thrown the word archetype and class around like crazy. Basically, everyday heroes, what you would call a class in Dungeons and Dragons, Everyday Heroes calls an archetype. A subclass in D&D is what a class would be in Everyday Heroes. So let's take a look at these. The Strong Hero, and I've got one of my favorite bits of artwork of the Strong Hero options from the core book there. The Strong Hero is based on the Strength attribute. They tend to focus on dealing a massive amount of damage either at a single target or repeatedly on a target or two. Now, while most Strong Heroes tend to focus on melee, there are one or two that focus on ranged attacks using Strength. Now, in the core book, the three classes of Strong Hero archetype are the Brawler, depicted here, who likes to, hit people and break things, or occasionally hit things and break people. The Heavy Gunner, which uses their strength with very heavy firearm and ordnance weaponry to make ranged attacks. And the MMA Fighter, which is a master of special attacks like shoving, tripping, grappling, while using strength and melee combos. In the Vault, you'll also get additional strong heroes like the Brutal Warrior, just like it sounds, the Street Warrior, which is a very versatile melee combatant that never gives up, and the Mutant Giant. Let's just say it's inspired by everyone's favorite gamma radiation-infused hero. The Agile Hero focuses on dexterity, speed, mobility, precision. And in the core book, you have my favorite, depicted here, the Martial Artist, but also the Scoundrel, which is kind of your roguish type character, and your Sharpshooter, focusing on ranged attacks, and lots of them. Whereas the Martial Artist focuses on rapid-fire massive numbers of melee attacks based on dexterity rather than strength. In the Vault, you'll get additional Combat Scout, which is just like it sounds, a Graceful Warrior, which is more of a, this is inspired by kind of Highlander-type warriors that use incredible skill and dexterity with swords and such, and the Motorhead if you want to focus on chase mechanics and such. The Tough Hero is the Survivor. It is as depicted, the Constitution Hero. This is the guy who will always get a damage reduction that will increase as his proficiency does. In the core book, the main tough classes are Bodyguard, where you focus on taking a hit for other people, Commando, which is your, well, it's a commando. You are able to use just about any weapon. You are able to push yourself to do more attacks and do all those attacks quite well while making yourself incredibly difficult to hit. The Commando tends to focus on being a one-man army, while the Bodyguard focuses on ally support. The Scrapper is, well, you're kind of a berserk frenzier, but you also have the ability to help out your allies by drawing fire away from them in a different way than the Bodyguard, mostly by constantly hitting the people that are attacking your friends. In the Vault, you also gain the Survivalist, which is going to be a big focus on traps and ambush attacks, as well as the Cyber Modder, which focuses on cybernetics and mastering that. The Monster Hunter, which is, well, you hunt inhuman and supernatural monsters. And the Mutant Shifter, which focuses on shape-shifting as a core element and weapon. The Smart Heroes are where we start seeing classes and archetypes that get special resources. The strong, agile, and tough heroes have their abilities that they don't really have to recharge because they're constantly using their physical ability. The smart hero and the others, wise and charming heroes, they each have a different kind of resource that lets them do what they do. The strong hero uses genius points to enact plans. Now, in the core setting of Everyday Heroes, there is no magic. The smart hero plans, however, will achieve the same effects of control or damage or big-scale chicanery that a mage's spell would in D&D. You have the engineer, which you can see depicted over here, with its little robot buddy pal. The hacker, the mastermind, the scientist. The scientist, by the way, gets to lob dangerous chemical substances for a wide range of energy cantrip-style attacks that they can do whenever they want. The mastermind is really good at manipulation and poison and hallucinogen-type stuff. The hacker, well, masters at controlling electronics. While the engineer can do everything from control their little robot buddy to cause massive electrical surges to build a jetpack or big explosion sort of thing. And in the vault, you get the billionaire, just like it sounds, and more military gritty style versions of the engineer, and as well as the actual healer, the combat medic, one of the first big healing classes available, although the scientist has some healing ability. The field researcher has less big explosive plans, but very down-to-earth, very realistic style plans. And the strategist is, well, the strategist. Their plans tend to revolve around influencing or manipulating their opponent, or turning the tide by having predicted the weather, which mechanically amounts to making the weather change, even though you're not really doing that. You're just predicting the weather and planning things well with it. Or, saying, hey, I called in the cavalry for an escape route or something. The alien gadgeteer and soothsayers bring the more extraordinary side of things, where you literally have a guy with an alien ray gun, or someone that is mystically psychic and can see the future. The wise hero is one of the more versatile archetypes, because while every single one of the different heroes of the archetypes we've looked at already, you can look at those and say, okay, each of them does their own specific thing, but they're clearly a strength-based hero, clearly a melee combat hero, or clearly at least a combat hero of some kind, or a control or planning hero for the smart hero. The wise hero classes can range from being combatants to support to heal. They can do just about anything based on the class you choose. Now, in the basic core book, you have the hunter, which has an animal buddy and focuses on, well, hunting and combat. The master, depicted here, a master in the sense of a martial arts master or a personal spiritual growth master, and they're a very skilled melee combatant. And the sleuth, which is a supreme investigator and cerebral type of hero. And when you get to the vault, you get the commander, which is a wisdom-based battlefield commander military type. And you get in the extraordinary bonded twins, where you're basically a single character with two bodies, or a paladin-style chosen with supernatural gifts, or a mutant psychic that can read minds and manipulate the world around them with new mutations they get, like telekinesis. The charming hero is, well, charming. They're the ones that are able to spend their resources called influence dice, and they can use that to roll as bonus die for any charisma checks eventually. They can use that to fuel various tricks that they have. Oh, incidentally, the wise hero has a resource too. The wise hero has focus points that can fuel a lot of their class talents. Now, the smart hero has plans, the charming hero has tricks. The wise hero doesn't have a particular thing that they use their resource for. Their resource fuels all of their talents, though. Now, in the core book, the charming heroes will have duelist, which is your melee combatant charming type. We're talking Three Musketeers style type stuff. The icon, which always reminds me of Zoolander. The leader, which is your ultimate charming support and battle coordinator type. And the manipulator, which is pretty darn scary in what they can do. It's right there in the name. And in the vault, you get things like the gutter rat, the networker, which has they have a companion as well, but while the hunters is an animal companion and the engineer is a robot companion, the networker has, well, they have people. They have, people companions. I've got a bodyguard, or I've got a really skilled person that does what I need them to do. And then there's the spy, which is, well, they're a spy. And then you've got the Mind Doctor, which is someone that can fiddle with memories and rewrite skill abilities, things like that. Well, that brings us near the end, but just so you know what's out there, the published materials that are out there include the Everyday Heroes Core Rulebook and the Vault Volume 1 supplement. Now, upcoming, the Armory is, well, it's just like it sounds. It's a book with massive quantities of additional equipment for vehicles, armor, well, mostly armor and weapons, but I hope a few vehicles, although the Garage is supposed to have the more vehicle elements in there. And the Armory is also supposed to include even near future and maybe even a few farther future options for weapons and armor. Intergalactic Heroes, as I mentioned, is going to be a Everyday Heroes compatible core book for playing more high science fiction games and maybe even a few science fantasy games. And yes, those are distinct genres for those of you following the Star Wars, Star Trek debate. I personally am a fan of both. Everyday Arcana is going to be your urban fantasy style games set in the modern day, but with magic being a thing, and maybe even elves and dwarves and such. The Garage is something that's been in the works, talking about more vehicle options and vehicle play situations. And Military Heroes is a book in the works that will be discussing, even more so than existing cinematic adventure rules, how to do a really military-focused adventure and hero-style campaign. The cinematic adventures I mentioned earlier include the original 8 of Escape from New York, which focuses on sort of a near-future dystopian situation. There's even rules for how to Mad Max up your vehicles with various weapons and defenses. The Crow is going to introduce ritual magic and some supernatural conditions like petrified, as well as, well, spirit talents and a franchise-specific character class where you can be one of the Reborn, like the Crow. In the Vault, the more setting neutral or agnostic version of that is the Chosen Wise class. You have Kong Skull Island and Pacific Rim, both of which focus on colossal scale creatures that you fight. In the case of Kong Skull Island, it's less that you fight them than survive them. In Pacific Rim, you add the mecha rules, because those mechs are also on colossal scale, so you can actually go toe-to-toe with a kaiju. Total Recall focuses on near-future science fiction with short-term space hops from Earth to, say, Mars, and on mutation rules, how to make mutants, the mutant character classes, things like that. And mutant powers, gotta love it. Highlander focuses on the immortal origin and the dueling rules that make the quickening and the cinematic bursts of energy and action in Highlander and its accompanying films and television shows so absolutely amazing. Universal Soldier is going to focus on cybernetics in another very near but still high-tech future. Rambo is going to be your more military action movie type adventures focused on historic Cold War military action from, say, the Vietnam War, possibly the Korean War. The possibilities are quite numerous because the Cold War took a long time and there were quite a lot of military actions going on. And recently, the other 8 I mentioned were all part of the original Kickstarter, but recently, in the last year, Evil Genius Games has released a new cinematic universe focusing on dark comedy horror, specifically The Return of the Living Dead, which provides some cool science fiction zombification options based on that film franchise, and 3 truly terrifying character class options as well. And there is also, in addition to this, the Sidekick website. If you've heard of D&D Beyond, Sidekick is the Everyday Heroes answer to D&D Beyond. You can purchase digital content there, not just digital copies of the various books. And by the way, when you purchase a digital item on Sidekick, you can download the PDF of it if you prefer to read the PDF. And there's also bonus features, small mini settings like Victorian Steampunk. Love that one personally, absolutely love it. The Wild West, love it. And so many others that have been released just in this last year alone. Not to mention all of the various official campaign adventures that were being done in the first year and a half of conventions for this game. Those are all available for purchase and regular use. And I will include in the description of the video the website to Evil Genius Games as well as to the Sidekick website because, well, quite frankly, I think it's really fun. And if this video does interest you, feel free to go and try it out. No, I am not currently being paid by Evil Genius, although 3 very dear friends of mine and I do have a YouTube channel where we try to make some podcast episodes about everyday heroes. If it's something you're interested in finding out more about, we've done some pretty deep dives into the different character archetypes and classes so far, and even talked about some of our hopes, plans, and personal ideas and ideals for future cinematic adventures. And it's, well, I'm biased, but I think it's a really fun podcast. I will also link the YouTube channel for that particular situation in the description as well. And give it a try. Maybe you'll like it. And I'd love to hear any thoughts and ideas you might have for playing this game in the comments. And that brings us to the end of this video. As I said at the end of the D&D one, before I realized I didn't fully have my community comments options on, please tell me, what would you like to see next? I am planning on doing some more Cosmere lore videos and some more tabletop RPG basic run-through videos, but is there something from Everyday Heroes or from the previous Dungeons & Dragons video you'd like to see, like an example of character creation from one or either of these games? Would you like me to do some videos about individual origins or a single video on all the origins available to characters so far in the Everyday Heroes game line? Would you like me to do some Everyday Hero archetype videos or series of videos? Now, that said, the podcast I do with my friends, Redemption HQ, that has some incredibly in-depth videos on archetypes and classes. Strongly recommend you watch that if you're interested. But if you'd like some shorter ones, I'd be happy to make some some of that for you as well. Or is there another RPG you'd like to hear from? In my plans for the channel video, I listed a few that I am interested in doing, such as the Cosmere RPG that's recently come out, as well as the 7th Sea franchise, Adventures in Rokugan, compatible with 5e D&D. Also, these various story path games out of Onyx Path, such as, well, the Realms of Pugmire games that have recently come through their 2nd edition, the Scion and Scion Dragon games, the Trinity Continuum games, and let us not forget some other Onyx Path creations, notably the Chronicles of Darkness. But I'm rambling, and I'm already well over an hour. So, if there's something you'd like to see, please let me know in the comments, and let me know if there's something else you'd like to see. As I mentioned before in my plans, I've also got some more literature reading ideas in mind, and perhaps even some history videos. So you all take care, have a wonderful night, or day, or afternoon, whenever you happen to be listening to this. And I will see you all next time. Stay safe out there.